We've been bombarded with extra chunks of content for Paradox's excellent grand strategy behemoth Europa Universalis 4 since it came out back in 2013, and for the most part they've added smart new features that improve on an already horribly addictive core game. So does latest effort Common Sense keep up that trend? By and large the answer is yes, but it's not without its flaws. So let's start with the new government options. Constitutional monarchies, most famously represented by the English government, make you sympathise with all those bloodthirsty, despotic tyrants throughout history who just wanted to get things done. Because to enact new laws, you have to push a vote through Parliament, and to get the individual constituencies representing your country on your side, you essentially have to suck up to them, bribe them, or otherwise cajole them into playing ball. As with everything in EU4, there's a careful balance to be found here. The bigger and more powerful your country becomes, the more seats in Parliament you'll need to give away, and the more expensive it is to ensure your political dominance. Religious types have plenty to keep themselves occupied too. Protestant countries can now gain church tradition over time that can then be traded in for various perks, from improved army morale to increased trading power. I'm still not sure there's enough new benefits to convince a Western power to switch over to Protestantism, unless they happen to like being bum rushed by hordes of irate Catholics, but I like that converting now allows you to tweak your religion to suit your nation. Buddhist leaders in Asia meanwhile need to balance their karma. Get too spiritual and you'll become disconnected from the day-to-day grind of running your nation, get too sinful and all your people will start to hate you. Theocracies from various major religions get a range of new bonuses as well, as long as they adhere to the guidelines of their faith. Playing as a religious order like the Teutonic Knights is actually a lot of fun now, especially as the expansion's vertical development options, more on those later, mean you don't have to blob the whole map with your colours in order to be a power on the world stage. Theocracies can also select their successors from a list of options, rather than being stuck with a hapless mouth breather no matter what you do. Heirs will typically be older when you do get them, but at least you get much closer control over the direction your country is heading in. If you're playing a warlike band of warrior monks, you might opt for a military leader, whereas if you like to keep things a bit more pious, you could choose a learned, benevolent priest. There's lots of fun stuff to mess around with here, and I've barely begun to dig into the multitude of options across the rest of the world map. By far the biggest mechanical change is the addition of province development. Each one of your provinces is now given an administrative, diplomatic and military rating. Respectively, these govern the amount of province earns from taxes, the production and trade influence it has, and its manpower pool, along with a number of other smaller modifiers. Bustling centres of power like Paris and London will have impressive development ratings, while snowy wastelands in the middle of the Russian wilderness might be almost totally worthless. By spending your valuable monarch points, you can upgrade each separate rating. It is a nice way to differentiate your key provinces, which previously amounted to little more than characterless jigsaw pieces in your overall empire, but the gains from actually trying to improve your holdings are relatively unimpressive considering how expensive it becomes. Monarch points in EU4 are like gold dust, and when faced with the choice of either sinking them into a minor provincial improvement or saving up for important regional coring or key tech research, the choice is always pretty clear. Development works best for smaller nations who can focus on making the most of their limited land. For the great powers of the game like England, France and Russia, it's often easier just to grab some extra territories. Combined with the accompanying free patch, Common Sense probably marks the biggest shake-up that EU4 has received since launch. This is thanks to a couple of huge changes to the combat system. Firstly, you can't cancel an army's movement once it's past the halfway point of a movement order now. No more cancelling a move halfway through when a 30 stack appears out of nowhere. Now you simply have to watch as your band of poorly armed heroes jumps straight into the meat grinder. It works the other way too, and in fact the AI is a little too easy to bait into traps, especially with the new fort system which stops armies from being able to bypass fortified positions without sieging them first. This is especially deadly in the tangled mass of Central Europe, where a tiny insignificant one province faction can theoretically hold up a military behemoth like France, at least long enough for their enemies to scramble together a defence. This makes even relatively minor wars a far trickier tactical and logistical challenge than before, and combined with the development system, it encourages you to think very carefully about which provinces to build your empire around. There are frustrations within both of these systems. The AI sometimes struggles to adapt to the increased power of fortifications across the game map, and development feels a little looser and less immediately useful than sinking your monarch points into text and ideas, but in the main I like what these changes are trying to do to the game. For the first time in a long time while playing Common Sense, I found that my established EU4 tactics weren't really working. And as England, I had to suffer a number of punishingly one-sided wars with France before I really got a handle on things. With Common Sense installed, EU4 feels somewhat less predictable and a little more ruthless than before, and that's a good thing for megalomaniacal types like me. The fact that there's a host of new historical events and tough choices across the traditionally less popular government types in the game is the icing on the cake. It doesn't feel essential, and several of the really game-changing ideas are contained in the accompanying free patch, but if you are an EU4 fan looking for some interesting new challenges, you won't regret picking it up. EU4 Common Sense scores a respectable 7.5 out of 10. For more from GameWatcher, please subscribe to our YouTube channel below, or follow us on Twitter at GameWatcherCom.